Okay, so I lied about making it one giant Arsenal talk, talking about my trip to London as well. I was afraid that the file would be too large for YouTube, especially with all the pictures that I'm going to be putting into this Arsenal talk. That would be just too big for YouTube to handle, and I didn't want to upload it and have YouTube saying that the file is too big, because the first part of the Arsenal talk got on pretty long, about talking about the two games. But this is kind of like my experience, going to the Emirates and going to the game, and then also the rest of my time in London. Again, if you don't want to listen to this, that's fine. But I guess like the first part of it will all be about Arsenal as well. But um, getting into London at about like a 7 hour flight from Chicago. Um, the temperature in Chicago when I left was -2 degrees Fahrenheit, and coming into London it was 48 degrees when I landed. So you can imagine it was basically like a heat wave. I know many people won't consider 48 degrees to be warm or even like good weather, but to me that was great weather. I love that kind of weather to where I love warm weather, obviously, but at the same time, when you're stuck in Chicago and you have to go through Chicago winters, it sucks. Um, Sometimes, especially in like January and February. Those are the coldest months in Chicago. And coming from 2 degree weather to 48 degree weather, I mean, it was like a heat wave to me. So that was nice. The weather overall throughout my time in London was great. Other than maybe one day it rained pretty much the entire day, which was Thursday. But I'll get into that. But the first 2 days in London, it was all about Arsenal. That was the first 2 days. The first day was going to the Emirates, seeing it for the very first time. I had a Legends tour with Charlie George, and then also I got to see the Arsenal Museum. And then the second day was the game, obviously. But the first 2 days were just all about Arsenal. I decided to walk to the Emirates. It was only about 1.8 miles from my hotel. And it was a nice day. It was a beautiful day. A little bit windy, but not too bad. The sun was off and on throughout the day. But again, heat wave to me. It was walking weather. I didn't feel like taking a tube or taking a cab or the bus, which now I kind of regret not doing that. But I'll get into a little bit more of that later. But walking up to the Emirates for the first time, seeing it like a little bit from the distance. I mean, it just got me excited. Walking up the stairs for the first time, and seeing the block letters of the huge Arsenal sign coming up the stairs for the very first time, seeing the armory. It was just like a sight to see. It's just like massive, of how big the Emirates actually is, even from the outside. And the smile on my face, I mean, it was just like ear to ear. There's nothing that you could have said to me that or did to me that would wipe the smile off my face, and of how excited and happy I was to finally be there. Seeing all the pictures, seeing it on TV, it just doesn't compare of actually being there. And there's plenty of fans walking around the stadium and everything. I took about a good hour before I even went on a tour to really just take it all in, and look and just walk around the stadium. And they have on the outside, all the main players throughout the club, throughout the history of the club, from when the inception of the club in 1886 to now. Of course, they don't have any of the real modern players. The most modern player they had was basically like Thierry Henry was probably like the last picture. They have pictures of them, and they have quotes by them. They have quotes about the fans and what it means to what it meant to them to play for Arsenal Football Club, and some of their more like famous quotes, I guess you can say. and what they did for the club, appearances, goals, any type of standout goals that they had. They have Charlie George on there, and of course they talked about his goal against Liverpool in the FA Cup final. Thierry Henry and some of his great goals, Dennis Bergkamp, Robert Perez, Ian Wright. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the great players throughout Arsenal's history, and it took about a good hour to go around the entire stadium. I mean, you could easily take like 2 hours to go around and read every single quote and read every single player. But again, my time frame was kind of up against me. Because I needed some time to rest after the flight and to get there and stuff. I wanted to give myself enough time to walk around the stadium and take enough pictures and see all the statues of Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp and Tony Adams and Herbert Chapman, and seeing the wall of names and the bricks and the names inside the right before the armory as well, of all the fans that you can buy like a little placard and have it put into the into the ground and everything. And that was just amazing to see all that, and seeing how just big and massive the Arsenal or the Emirates actually is, and going through and reading everything and just taking it all in. And there's plenty of fans walking throughout the entire stadium and taking pictures and everything like that, and just taking all the pictures and just seeing it and just taking a step back and seeing how really big this club is and where it has come to from the Highbury days and now the Emirates, and just being happy, of finally being there and seeing it with my own eyes, rather than seeing it only in pictures and on TV as well. But being there, I mean, you could just feel like almost like the vibe. You're an Arsenal fan, and this is kind of like like your own type of like Mecca. Of finally trying to, getting to, I envy, the people who actually live in London and in England or the UK, that, it's so easy for them to go and see a game, every single, weekend or every single week. And, for them to be able to see almost every single game at any time they want to where someone like me or someone like some of you guys who actually live in, different countries, to where you actually want to make it there one day. Yeah, save up your money, whether it takes you 2 years to do it, 5 years to do it, 10 years to do it. It's a must, if you're an Arsenal fan, and it's worth every single penny that you spend to get over there, just to see that, and just to be into the same place where so many great players have played, seeing the pitch and going throughout the stadium tour. But the stadium tour was amazing. Having the host of course the Legends Tour. There's two different type of tours. There's a tour. It's just a normal tour. You don't get to see everything within the tour. I don't think you get to see like the Diamond Club and certain parts, like I believe. I'm not sure if you get to see the locker rooms or even get to go on the pitch or not. I know they're just two different types of and of course you don't have a host. You have like a little like a machine, like a handheld device that talks you through the stadium tour. It's all different types of languages too, but again, you have like a legend like Charlie George, who has done great things for the club and won trophies for the club, talking about his time with Arsenal and taking you throughout the stadium, throughout the Emirates and everything, and telling you little stories about the club, about the stadium, of how it was built. It was just a great experience, and meeting him and hearing some of his stories. He's a funny guy. He's very knowledgeable. Knows everything about the club. He was born and raised 5 minutes from Highbury, 5 minutes from the Emirates. Of course, Highbury, it was still there. Went to that, and of course it's all basically like flats and condos and whatnot. They do have like a little kind of monument thing there that says this is where Highbury used to be. And of course he talked about a lot of his days and even the modern game, where he keeps up on it, and he goes to just about every single home match, goes to some of the away matches as well. Of course, he is employed by the club, obviously, to do these tours. I think he does it, like 2 or 3 times a week. There's a few different Arsenal legends who do tours throughout the week. I believe it's 7 days a week. Sometimes they're subject to change depending on what weather, and depending on if there's a game, or I was kind of scared doing it a day before a Champions League match, because I was afraid that they might call it off just because it's a Champions League, because the people who were televising, whether it was Sky Sports or whoever UEFA has their contract with, were in and around the stadium, setting up all our cameras and setting up all the banners and everything for the Champions League. And it was kind of cool to see of how they were setting up, like, all the cameras, and they're setting up the media center. We got to see like everything, like Diamond Club. We got to see, we were up on the club level seats, we were down on the pitch, we were down in the dressing room, which was awesome. We got to see like the physio room and the whirlpool, and like the showers, and everything. The tunnel, had a picture with the FA Cup. It was a replica. I don't know. For some reason, they had to move the actual FA Cup out of the room. For whatever reason, I don't know if there's some type of a scare. I don't know if that's what they normally do, if they just have a replica there. But they said they had to move the FA Cup out of the room that day for some odd reason. I don't know if they got some type of phone call that they said someone was going to try to steal it or something. I just don't know. Those questions weren't. The question was asked of why it was moved out, but Charlie George said he just couldn't answer the question. Saw the time capsule. Saw the the Invincibles Cup, the golden EPL trophy that the FA gave to Arsenal after the unbeaten season. That was awesome. That was in a very thick glassed case. That you would probably need, a couple sticks of C4 just to break through it. I mean, it was in a secure case. But it was awesome to see that. It was awesome just to like sit there and stare at it. And they had like a banner of all 49 games that they went through, from the first one to the last one. And all the players and who played on those 49 games, and kind of like a tribute to that, all in one case. So it was just beautiful. Seeing the huge Canon logo inside the stadium coming out of the tunnel. The whole experience was just like, everybody that was on the tour. I mean, it was just like everybody was smiling. Everybody was having fun and asking questions to Charlie George and the people who actually worked there. There was a couple people who joined us on the tour that actually worked there and worked the tours and were security there and everything. And they were very nice. Everybody was very nice and very welcoming. Always asked us if we needed anything, water, napkins or anything, if we needed to sit down. Anytime during the tour, we could spend as much time as that we needed to take pictures, and there's one sequence where Charlie George kind of took the time and gave autographs and photos with everybody, and that was fun. All in all, the experience was just amazing. Charlie George, one of the funnier things throughout the tour is he kept on talking about money, and how much it took to build the Emirates, what it cost to keep up the grounds, what it cost to keep up like the Diamond Club, what it cost. Everything was based around money, which is always kind of funny to especially Arsenal fans, that we're always hollering and screaming that we need to spend more money. Of course, it seems like when he's talking about all this stuff, or what was going through my head was, they're spending all this money on luxury type stuff. I understand of upkeeping the Emirates and upkeeping the ground, the pitch, and everything like that. But when you're hearing them telling us, the fans, that they're spending money on this and that, to where it should be more towards players to make the club better and to make the club more successful. It was kind of a funny note that he kept on reverting back to money and of how much Arsenal was spending on luxury items and stuff like that, and how much they were spending to upkeep the stadium and whatnot, and trying to keep it perfect. And it seems like every single modern day stadium that is built, especially after the Emirates, Charlie George made it a note that a lot of teams, a lot of clubs come to the Emirates and see what they did with their stadium. Like they mirror a lot of what the Emirates was built on, of how they built the Emirates as far as like seating capacity, and how they designed the building, and how they designed the inside of the building, which most fans can't see unless you take a stadium tour, which a lot of clubs like from France and Germany and Spain, they all come sometimes to the Emirates if they're building a new stadium to see what like Arsenal did with their stadium. It's kind of like almost the standard of new modern football stadiums, which was kind of interesting to hear. We like the spacing and everything, and the space that's for the fans when they sit down. Being at the game on Thursday or Wednesday, at no time did I ever feel like crushed or anything like that. There's so much, there was enough space to sit down, unless you're a very large person, obviously. But if you're an average sized person, you would never feel crushed. You would never feel like uncomfortable, I guess is the real word. You always really felt comfortable. Every single seat in the stadium is padded, as far as like the seat itself. Maybe not the backing, but the seat itself that you actually sit down on is padded. It's nice. It's beautiful. I'm not too sure of what the upper, if the upper stands are padded, but I can imagine that they probably are. Just because of the size and how much money they spent on every single stadium to try to make the fan as comfortable as possible, and I think they accomplished that. It was just a great experience altogether. From there, I did ask one question. It was kind of a funny question, but it wasn't really answered. They pinpointed where it was covered at the time, but they pinpointed where all the players sat and where Arsene Wenger sat, and he sits in the 13th seat. And even though the number 13 is kind of bad luck for everybody else, I guess in France it's a good luck number. So he sits in the 13th chair. And the question I kind of asked, I had to ask it. I asked him if the seats were heated, because it seemed like, and he said no. And which was kind of shocking. I thought the seats would be heated, considering that they are leather, and considering the weather changes in London throughout the season. And I asked, since they're not heated, why does Arsene Wenger sit down most of the time? Why doesn't he stand up and sit on the touchline in the manager's box? And he kind of just shrugged his shoulders and didn't say much after that. But he answered a lot of questions through his time at Arsenal, and he kind of made a funny joke because the amount of money that he was making during his time at Arsenal, it was shocking. He was making £5 a week as an apprentice. How they did things back then, it wasn't really like a youth academy, so to speak, like they have now. He was more of a you had to move up into what they call like an apprentice, which you make £5 a week. And then once you finally move up to the first team, you go from £5 a week to £30 a week. So put that in perspective of what the players are making these days, and what even the lowest player on Arsenal is making. Even some of the kids that are signing contracts now at the age of 17, of what they're making per week. In comparison to what Charlie George, who is an Arsenal legend, of what he was making. Obviously, he started making more throughout his time as a player, but he said he made in 1 year what the league minimum is now. What they're let me rephrase this. What a person makes in 1 week for a league minimum, which is for the Premier League, is around 30 to 40,000 pounds a week, is probably about the minimum, I guess, for an English Premier League player. He was making that in 1 year at Arsenal. So put that in a little perspective of how the modern game has changed and how the money has changed throughout the time, from during his playing days in the 60s and 70s through now in 2015, and the type of money that they're making back then in accordance to now. Of course, he made another funny comment of he used to have to take the bus home after every game. Because he just didn't have the money to buy his own car, or buy his own type of car service or anything like that. So he had to take the bus home after every match, after every home match, after every away match. And he said after home matches, if we played, if Arsenal played really poorly and they lost the game, he said it scared him somewhat of getting onto the bus with other Arsenal fans, with other supporters, not knowing what was going to happen to him. So that was kind of like a funny story that he was telling, that sometimes he would have a paper and he would just hide his face in the paper so no one would recognize him. So no one knew that was actually him on the bus going home from an Arsenal game after they lost. Of course, after they won, he said, they partied up, and he made a lot of funny cracks about, after a game, they would sit in like a, not like a hot tub, but just kind of like a bath. And he said he would have a cigarette in one hand and like a bottle of whiskey in the other. That's how they celebrated. Now it's completely opposite, to where you look at Chesney, who was trying to smoke in the shower after the Southampton game. Jack Wilshere with all of his pictures of his cigarette smoking. To where that was a mainstay back in those days. That was what those guys did. They would get drunk after games. They would smoke after games, and that was like the common thing back then. Now it's frowned upon. So that's another little put into perspective of how the modern game has changed completely now. But overall, the stadium was amazing to see, especially it was empty. But seeing it, when it was full on Wednesday was just another highlight. But after the stadium tour, I went to the museum, and that was fun too. That's a definite must see. Of course, if you do get a Legends tour, the entrance to the museum is free. And that's open till like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. But again, the Legends tour, you get free entry to the museum, and you can spend easily like a couple hours there. It's not a huge place, but it's more like a basement type. You have to go down the stairs, and it's kind of like a basement type of a room that they have it in. And they have stuff dating back from the inception of the club all the way until basically like the modern era of like the Emirates, going basically up to I would say like '07, '08. They have like their own little section for the Invincibles. They have their own little section of of going through just about almost every single legend in the club. That alone, you could sit there and watch it for like a half an hour of the video they have. They have different like video setups of different eras of Arsenal. Most of it was modern. Most of it was from like the 70s on. Of course, they have all the highlights of most of the highlights of like any type of FA Cup final, anytime they won the league, any type of like video that they did have, obviously, of when they won their trophies. Different kits, different type of shoes that they wore, cleats and everything, and you know the type of the balls that they had, and different type of footballs that they used back in those days. And it was a great setup. Again, like very clean, everything, like just like the Emirates, everything was nice and tidy and clean. It was just nice. It was very very well organized. And I spent a good, probably about like an hour and a half just at the museum. You could easily spend probably like 2.5 hours there if you wanted to, just reading everything and sitting down and watching like all the different videos they have on the history of Arsenal and all the different type of items that they have and looking at all of them and taking pictures and stuff like that. But I spent about good like almost hour and a half there, and then I just got, I started to get too tired, too exhausted because I was just, walking and standing throughout the day. I didn't get too many opportunities to actually like really sit down and rest. So, overall, I was probably there because then after the museum, I hit the Armory and got my Freddie Lumberg jersey, which I'll post a picture on that. I posted a bunch of pictures on Twitter throughout my week there and throughout my time going to the Emirates and stuff like that. But I'll post some more pictures of the stadium tour and of course the game and stuff like that. But again, got Freddie Lumberg. Decided to go with him, one of my subscribers here on Arsenal Talk. Throughout that option of go with Lumberg because not too many people have him, and that was a good call. So overall, that's what I went with. They didn't have any authentic jerseys, unfortunately. I was kind of hoping they did, but I guess all the authentic jerseys got bought out immediately once the Puma launch. Which was kind of surprising though that they don't have any authentic jerseys. That's kind of like a concern that I have with Puma, that they don't give Arsenal or give the Armory or any of the outlets enough enough merchandise, I guess you can say, to sell off. So hopefully that changes probably next year, that they have enough of them, because I would still like to get an authentic jersey, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing once they release the the new away kits and possibly a new third kit in the summertime. But yeah, I went with Freddie Lumberg. That Armory, I mean, you could easily spend like $1,000 in that place, because they have everything from pens to shirts to pants and different types of shirts and jackets, and I mean you could just spend a fortune in there and be happy with it, because they have just about everything that you can think of that has the Arsenal brand on it. But then again, walked back to the hotel, passed out for a few hours. Again, the next day was all about Arsenal again. It was game day. Super excited. Could only sleep a handful of hours. Couldn't sleep all the way through just because every time an Arsenal game comes up, and I can barely sleep the next day or the day of the game, and went to a pub, saw some a couple Arsenal fans. Of course, we were talking about the game and of getting to the game and how easy it should be for a win. Well, we were so further from the truth of what was actually going to happen that night. But seeing the stadium lit up rather than being in the daytime, again, it was just an exciting moment, and seeing it just illuminated and seeing all the the statues illuminated with the lights, and seeing the crowd and seeing everybody come into the stadium, and I got into the stadium about 50 minutes before kickoff, and the stadium was pretty dead. I was pretty much sitting there almost like by myself for until about 20 minutes into the start of the game. That's when it started to get like really packed up, and the stadium started to really fill up. But it was kind of nice just to sit there and take it all in and look around the stadium and take pictures and just to comprehend that I'm sitting here in Arsenal and in the Emirates, ready to see the game and seeing the players warm up and everything. It was just a great experience, and seeing how close I was to the actual pitch and to be able to see like everything going on. As far as the atmosphere goes, it wasn't as great. I watched a little bit of the playback. Of course, I DVR'd the game and I watched a little bit back of it. I was kind of surprised where it came through the TV that it was a little loud, but through my time there, it almost felt like a ghost town in some cases. the clock end portion. It seemed like the clock end portion and then the opposite part of the field behind the goal. It seemed like those were the two biggest like singing groups and chanting groups throughout the Emirates. Anytime the group, and it was basically like the upper stand too, not too much of the lower stand. The midfield crowd, they were pretty much just like sitting on their hands and not saying much, not chanting, not singing throughout most of the game. Anytime like a chant or song was erupted, I always joined in. Throughout the game, I was always screaming for the players to move faster because, again, like I said in my last Arsenal talk, it just seemed like everybody was like a statue. Sometimes everything was like in slow motion. It felt like, and but anytime a song or any type of chant that was started, I always joined in, and there was a couple of us that tried to start songs and chants, and just no one would join in, which was concerning. I know the hot topic right now on Twitter is the hashtag 12th man to try to get Arsenal to get a singing group section going in Arsenal. I think it's going to be a tough task to do. I think all the fan groups need to unite for once. I think all the fans need to unite for once and get Arsenal to do this. But I think it's going to be a large task. That's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be something that needs to be done. But if it's going to be done, it's going to take, the process of it is going to take like 2 or 3 years, just because they need to relocate some, season ticket holders. And will season ticket holders want to relocate just for a singing group section? It's a topic for another day that I can get into in another Arsenal talk. But the atmosphere, it just felt dead. Considering it was a European night, it was a Champions League night, and you would think the atmosphere would be that much more than even an English Premier League game, or even an FA Cup tie, or a League or a Capital One Cup tie. But it just wasn't. You never really, you felt the energy in the beginning of the game, but even before they scored their first goal, it just felt dead. It just really felt dead. And of course, after they scored that first goal and after they scored that second goal, I mean, it was like the air was just let out the entire stadium. There were some sections that were trying to start songs, like I said, and start chants, and some people would join in, some people wouldn't, and that's a major concern. Because sometimes these players, they thrive off of our energy and what we give them throughout the game, and what kind of energy boost that we can give them throughout a game, and it just wasn't there. It was just shocking. I don't know what else to really say about it. I was expecting more, to be honest with you. I was expecting more from a Champions League night, especially a night. I know people were probably just getting off work and just arriving at the stadium. Maybe people were exhausted from work, but again, at least for myself, I was exhausted before I got into the game. But I was ready to sing my heart out and chant and just be loud the entire game, and that's what I tried to be. But in the section I was in, there were some people who joined in and some people who just didn't, and that's kind of like a concern. It's kind of shocking that people pay that type of money to just basically sit on their hands for 90 minutes. You can do that at home. I mean, if I actually lived there in London, I mean, I wouldn't have a voice for 8 months out of the year, because I would be singing and chanting and yelling and trying to do all that I could to, pump up the players and everything like that. And, some people, they just sit there and do nothing. And it's just kind of shocking. Some people just sit there and they talk about their lives and stuff, and it's like you realize that there's a game happening in front of you. And it's just kind of shocking, of how dead the atmosphere was for that night. But my experience overall through those 2 days, it was great. I wasn't able to get on Arsenal Fan TV. I wanted to, But by the time I got out of the stadium, I got out about 10 minutes after. Being in row two, it kind of, yeah, that's the only drawback of being that close to the pitch. Sometimes it takes a long time to get up the stairs and to get actually out of the stadium because people just take their sweet ass time. I mean, there were several fans that were standing in front of me who weren't even looking up to go out. They were looking back onto the pitch and still, basically telling the players to fuck off. I mean, it was just kind of like ridiculous of some of the stuff that some of the fans were doing and saying throughout the game. But some people were just standing there, looking like watching the players walk off the pitch, and it was just like, let's move, come on, let's move, let's get out of here. And it took about 10 minutes to get out of the stadium. By the time I reached like Tony Adams' statue, that's where Arsenal Fan TV is usually set up. It was just packed. I mean, I couldn't even see Robbie. That's how packed it was. That's how huge the crowd was around him. And the crowd was loud. The only thing I could really see was the light coming off from the camera that they were using. And obviously he was doing some type of interview at the time, and the crowd was loud. I mean, it was loud. People were yelling and screaming, and people were saying "fuck off" and "fuck these cunts," and I mean, the word cunt itself is used more by the UK than any other country or any other continent in the world. I'm sorry, it's funny as hell, but every 3 seconds, especially during the game, the word cunt came out every 3 seconds easily, which was kind of funny because here in America that's made, people use that mainly for women, to describe women or describe who, like a bitch or something like that, and we don't use that word, and our word here is basically like fuck. Over in England and London, the main word is cunt. So that was kind of funny, but all the fans were screaming and yelling all throughout the Arsenal TV section, and so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to even bother. I'm not going to probably even get in. It'll probably take me like an hour and a half just to get through the crowd, just to get into it and just to say even a few words. I tried to tweet Arsenal Fan TV before the game and ask them, what's the possibility of me even getting on, and I never got a response back from them, unfortunately. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to walk back to the hotel. This isn't even, because, after the game, I was just like gutted and shocked, and I was trying to comprehend what I just saw. I traveled all this way to see my first Arsenal game, and they happen to have the worst performance of the season on a Champions League night, of all nights, of all games. And, I was just pretty much like gutted. And I didn't want to stand around and hear other people complain and whine and cry about the game and cry about the players and call out the players and stuff like that. And I just had kind of like enough of it, to be honest with you. I just needed to go back to the hotel and basically have a couple of beers and pass out, which basically what I did. Waking up on Thursday. Thursday was probably like the worst day. It was raining pretty much throughout the entire day. Of course, I made the mistake. I went to the British Museum on Thursday, and of course, I decided to walk there as well. Of course, on my GPS, it said it was only 1.6 miles away from my hotel. So I thought, you know what? It's a decent day. I checked my weather.com app, and it said that it wasn't supposed to rain at all that day. I was halfway to the British Museum, and it started raining. It was it wasn't a hard rain, but it was a steady rain, and it pissed me off because I forgot my umbrella back at the hotel, and plus, weather.com said it wasn't supposed to rain that day. So that pissed me off. So I was walking in the rain to the British Museum, and it was okay. It was I guess in one word, it's overrated. It was still worth the trip. It was still worth getting into the British Museum and seeing everything that they have, all the displays and all the different countries that they display in the British Museum. It didn't exceed my expectations. I was really looking to be wowed as far as like all the comments that are made about the British Museum and how great it is, and I was looking to be wowed, and I really wasn't wowed by some of their displays and stuff like that. I was impressed by like the Chinese exhibit, the India exhibit, and the Egyptian exhibit, but other than that, it was just average. I thought some of the Field Museum here in Chicago, pretty much blows it away, in my opinion. So it was kind of like it was underwhelming. I was kind of disappointed, but at the same time, it was still worth the trip just to see those few exhibits that they had, especially in the Chinese exhibit was really cool. They spent a lot of what they have in there of like the Ming Dynasty and stuff like that, and it was really cool to see. And like the India exhibit and like all the Buddhas, all the different type of Buddhas that they had was pretty cool. All the different type of sculptures and vases and all the different type of kind of like weaponry that they had in there as well. I was underwhelmed by they had like a Greek Roman slash European exhibit all based in one room, and that was really underwhelming. That was I wasn't impressed by it whatsoever. Of the different stuff that they had, I thought it could have been better. I thought it would have been better, given the fact that it's London. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. It's one of the most touristy cities in the world, and it was just kind of like underwhelming. But again, still worth the trip. Still worth. I spent about 2.5 hours there. Still worth the time. It's still worth, but I was kind of hoping to almost spend almost like the majority of the day there, of just going through everything and reading all the exhibits and seeing all the history of it. But yeah, but I left there. It was still fucking raining. Of course, there was no real tube station nearby. Of course, I would have had to walk a mile just to get to the nearest tube station, and my hotel was just another half a mile. But walking in that rain, it was a pain in the ass. Walking through London was just a pain in the ass, just in general. Here in the United States, everything is kind of like one smooth surface. In London, they're basically like 2x2, 2 foot by 2 foot square blocks of concrete as their sidewalks, and some of it are brick and some of it is 2x2 slabs of concrete, and they're not secure, they're not balanced. I mean, you can walk on one of the squares and it'll come right up off the ground. And my time of walking back to the hotel, I ended up spraining my ankle so badly from walking back, from hitting, I don't know if it was like one of the old time bricks. I mean, the brick, some of the brick streets that they had, and some of the bricks that they had as their sidewalks. It looked like it was still from like the 1800s type of brickery, and it was just insane to try to walk on it and stuff like that. I ended up spraining my ankle so bad that I couldn't walk on it. Luckily, it happened pretty close to my hotel, that I could see my hotel. That was the only thing that was keeping me going, because I could actually see my hotel from the distance. And if I couldn't do that, I would have had to basically sit down on the ground because it was so painful. And it pretty much killed my rest of the day on Thursday and my whole day on Friday. To the point to where I just basically had to sit at my hotel and lay in bed throughout, basically like a day and a half, which killed a complete day for me. And Friday was like a beautiful day too. It was like 54 out, sun was out. It was almost like clear skies, very few clouds, and of course I'm stuck here. I was stuck in my hotel room because I couldn't walk. I couldn't put any weight down on it. Basically, anytime I got up, I basically had to put it in perspective, I had to basically hop on one leg to like the bathroom even. That's how bad it was. I basically had to order room service throughout the entire day just to eat and stuff. I mean, it was really bad. It kind of swelled up a little bit too. I almost thought it was broken, but there was no kind of black and blue marks or anything like that. So thank God for that. But it still hurts to right now. It's still painful, very painful. But Saturday, I took about 6 Advil because I couldn't leave London without seeing the Tower of London. That was one of the main things I really wanted to see when I was there, because I'm big into history. I love history. I love everything about history, and that was one of the things that I needed to see before I left. And took about 6 Advil. I know that's kind of like overdose, and you're only supposed to take at maximum 4 at one time. But my ankle was still bothering me. It was still painful to even walk on, so I had to take about 6 Advil, and took the tube to Tower Hill. That's the main station, right outside. You take you take Angel to Tower Hill, and once you come out of Tower Hill Station, it's just right there. What a massive place, huge. I guess maybe back in, maybe now if you really look at it, you're thinking, okay, this was one of the biggest, castles and forgeries and everything, back in the day, back in the, like, medieval times, and this was like the main house for, kings and queens, and this is where they lived and everything, and it was just massive. Of course, right next to it, right beyond in the distance too, was London Bridge as well, and seeing those two things like right next to each other, it was just an amazing sight. And going through the Tower of London, and all the history and the different kings and queens, and the prisoners and the people who died there and the people who stayed there, and the amount of people that stayed there during when it was in working order. I mean, the history there was just amazing. I mean, you could almost like feel it. If you can just like sit down in a room and just look around and think, there was prisoners in here, there was people who died in here, there's kings and queens who walked through these halls and walked through these towers, and it was just, you could smell it too. You could smell like how old it was, and you could smell like the wood and the concrete, and you could just tell it was from, 1,000 years of history was just laid all out in one section of London. And it was just a great experience. Took plenty of pictures. Took had like a little, one of those devices that you could do your own personal tour. Saw the crown jewels, and holy shit. Unfortunately, I couldn't take any pictures. They wouldn't allow any. I went into one of the portions of the Tower of London. It was like a small. It was almost like the White Tower, as they called the main building, but it was like another tower for, I believe, Charles the First and Second, George the First. There was like 3 or 4 kings that was their building. That was the building that they built for themselves and that they stayed at during their time as the king. They had replicas of their headsets, their crowns, and I couldn't take any pictures of them for whatever reason. The guy said, the beef eater in there said, what, you can't take any pictures, and I was like, so why can't I take pictures of replicas if they're replicas? He's like, well, you just can't take any pictures of them. I was just like, so they're not replicas, right? And he couldn't answer the question, because why couldn't you just take a picture of a replica? Just wouldn't make any sense. You should be able to take a picture of a replica. So it was, I came to the conclusion that they weren't replicas, and then they couldn't just fit them into the crown jewels building. But that was cool. The crown jewel. They had a punch bowl. If I can describe it to you as best I can, it was 3 meters wide. To put it in perspective of how much wine it holds, it was solid gold. It was made of solid gold. You could put 144 bottles of wine, modern day bottles of wine, into this punch bowl to fill it up. I mean, that's how massive it was. That's how huge it was. And think of it, it's all solid gold. It was all made of gold. And the different crowns and jewels and swords and the chalices. I mean, oh my God. The amount of money in that room. The only thing I was kind of surprised at was the security. I know they probably have their own like small army just in case someone tries to come and try to steal everything. I'm sure every glass plate is probably like 3 or 4 inches thick. But I was kind of surprised. Outside of the crown jewels building, they only had 2 armed guards. Outside of the building, protecting the building and whatnot, and putting themselves on display and stuff like that. But I was kind of surprised there wasn't more security within the building itself. But like I said, I'm sure throughout the building, or we just couldn't see it. The tourists just couldn't see it. But I'm sure there's probably enough security like within the Tower of London that you just can't see, because I know there's a lower dugout to where they lower the crown jewels into like a vault and stuff. And I'm sure they have people down there, monitoring the place and looking at every single person, and securing the place. But I was surprised that there wasn't more security than that when you had that type of jewels and gold and everything like that on display. But all in all, it was just a great day. From there, I was going to go to Westminster Abbey, because I definitely wanted to see that as well, but the line was down. Of all days, the line was down. The whole station was down. There was about 5 or 6 stations down for engineering that day, on a Saturday of all days. That they shut down a bunch of train stations, a bunch of tube stations, considering that a Saturday would be a very hot time for tourists or even locals to go down and see different parts of the city and even historical sites. And the nearest station to Westminster Abbey was a mile and a half away. And I was like, in my current condition, because the Advil started to wear off, I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't walk this. It's just I'm not gonna force myself to walk that and walk. I know a mile and a half sounds like petty, but in my current conditions, it was just my ankle was so bad, and it started to really kind of throb and everything. I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm just gonna go back to the hotel and just relax, and next time. Because there definitely will be a next time. I'm definitely going to try to do maybe like an Arsenal game, maybe like every year, maybe every 2 years, just to try to get back there and take in a game and get to see all the stuff that I wasn't able to see. Because too, like on Friday, I had a sightseeing tour set up for myself for that day, and that even got canceled. So I mean, it was kind of like it was a great trip, but at the same time, there was a lot of bad luck involved in my trip, going in from Arsenal losing. My sightseeing tour got canceled. I sprained my ankle on Thursday. It seemed like a lot of things were against me, but at the same time, it was just a great experience. I highly suggest, like I said, if you need to save up for a couple years, 5 years, 10 years, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. The experience is worth it. I'll definitely do it again. Like I said, hopefully maybe every year, every 2 years, I can go back and take in a game and see all the sights and everything. It's just a great city. The only kind of real gripe I have is the transportation. If you're in the U.S., you're so used to, I'm in Chicago. You can go to any part of Chicago in the city, whether it's a good part of town, bad part of town, whether it's the outskirts of Chicago. There's always a cab waiting. You can always hail a cab anywhere in the city that you want to. In London, that's not the case. They depend on buses and the tube station, and that's it. I mean, you have to notify your hotel that you want a cab service, and they have to call the cab service for a cab to come up to your hotel to pick you up, which kind of sucks. It does kind of suck, especially if you don't know the tube system all that well. It kind of sucks too, of trying to navigate yourself through the tube system and figure out what stops you need to get off on, what changes and everything like that. I mean, the people are nice there; they're very helpful. As long as you're kind of like nice to them. If you say excuse me, if you try to be nice to them and ask them questions of how to get through the tubes, usually they'll answer you. You might get an asshole here or there, like I got on Saturday, and he just kind of like walked away from me, didn't even help me at all. But if you're nice enough, they'll help you out a lot. But that's my only real gripe about London is the transportation is not as modern as you would think it would be. It's not as easy to get around the city as you would hope it would be. Let's see, what's the other? Yeah, the one thing that I noticed too about London is there's so many fucking restaurants. I mean, everywhere you walk, there's a ton of restaurants. I don't know how they all stay in business, to be honest with you. I know it's a huge city. A ton of people live there. I get it. I know it's a, it's a big tourist destination for everybody, for people in Europe, people in North America, South America, Africa, Asia, you name it. Everybody's there in one single city. But the amount of restaurants, it was just amazing. I mean, here in Chicago, we don't even have that many restaurants. I mean, there's usually, storefronts, and then, for every like two or three stores, then there's a restaurant. In London, it's the complete opposite. There's usually about like five or six restaurants, and then there's a store, and then there's five or six more restaurants, and then there's a store. I mean, it was crazy the amount of restaurants. I mean, you would never starve. I'll tell you that much. You go to London, you'll never starve. The food was decent. The food was pretty good. The hotel food was pretty good. Had breakfast there, every single day. But yeah, never really had all that many complaints other than like the transportation methods of the city. People were very welcoming. I never had any problems with anybody. Anytime I try to go up to someone and ask them for, whether it was advice for the tube or to try to get somewhere, never had any problem. Walking amongst other Arsenal fans, we always kind of like, nodded our heads at each other and kind of made aware of each other and stuff. So that was pretty cool. Going throughout the city and basically being in North London. That's where basically my hotel was in Islington, and you always saw Arsenal fans walking all over throughout the part of the city that I was in. So that was always kind of cool. Never heard any type of gripes from other fans or anything like that. Met some Chelsea fans, met some West Ham fans, Liverpool fans. I mean, they're all there. Never had any problems with those people. Never heard any type of like slander against me or anything like that. So all in all, it was a pretty cool experience, and definitely would do it again.